Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Chump Block, episode 3.
The trifecta.
The Triforce of delicious Magic the Gathering entertainment during your downtime. I am here, Derek Boyko, with my co-host,
Archie, Owen.
and we're here to bring you some awesome Magic content. So, as you might have noticed, there has been a great holiday. Maybe even the greatest of holidays, if you like getting cool gifts and stuff that happened during our delay between these episodes. So, we're back after Christmas, as well as Hanukkah and whatever you want to celebrate there, and the New Year, or as I like to call it, the Gruel Year.
Why? Because we're going to smash it.
Yes, we're going to smash literally the entire year. That is the Gruel way.
That sounds right. I mean, not gruel, then die. Like 2015.
2015's dead to me, man.
Like, it's gone.
It's
like,
gone.
Roll on 2016.
Yeah.
I mean, they were talking about 2016 for the entirety of 2015, so, you know.
2016 still talking about 2015. What are you doing with your life? We already took our oaths to the new year, and we're definitely ready for a new year and a new set.
Yeah. My New Year's oath is to play more Magic.
My New Year's oath is to play more Magic. We're really bad at this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a hard one. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I like to set myself achievable goals.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
we're here to go ahead and if you haven't noticed, there's a new set coming out called Oath of the Gatewatch. We're gonna go over a couple of the spoilers here on the episode, and we'll go down the line of a few other things for you today. So go ahead and stick with us throughout the show, and thanks for watching.
welcome to this week's Tidings. Up on the docket this week, we've got GP Oakland, the last standard GP, last hurrah of this format before Oath rotates in, and we have a little bit of controversy from the SCG Modern event that also happened on the same weekend. So look forward to that. First of all, a great head of hair won GP Oakland.
Yeah, I'm
Not sure if you noticed or not. Like,
I don't know what the player is, but I believe the name of the person who won was Reed Duke's hair.
I believe so. I believe that it is now a separate entity
Yes.
and has officially started entering tournaments as a second player, which I think is very unfair.
Does Reed
because,
Duke have
you know,
to pay for 2 entry fees? I don't know how
I
this
think
works.
so. I do think he does have to pay for 2 entry fees, but I mean, at least he doesn't have to pay for the 2 entry fees. But what happens if he gets paired against his hair?
I suppose you just play a game of solitaire. Oh, maybe he has to have 2 copies of the same deck. Ooh, this is a good question.
Oh yeah. God, the rally mirror. Anyway, Reed Duke won GP Oakland.
Well, I was gonna say, real quick, everybody knows that when you go to a tournament with a friend, you always get paired up. So if Reed Duke and his hair both signed up, they're literally gonna be in the first round.
Yeah, it happened like at GP London last year.
Every time.
Second round, like two of my mates got paired up. Like, it's not even. It's ridiculous, like how
Yeah.
common it is.
There's like
So
1,200 to 2,000 players. Alright, you guys are round 2.
yeah, it's just like, really.
Thanks.
Well, I know this matchup because I know what you're playing. Would you like to concede now?
So, yeah, Grand Prix Oakland happened. Unfortunately, it happened in January instead of September, but we'll get over it. So, there were some interesting decks in the top 8, but
And some outside the top 8 as well, actually.
yeah, I don't have a lot of particulars, but maybe you can grab some. I do know that Reed Duke was on Rally.
4 color rally, I believe.
Yes.
Four colors. Which has kind of proved throughout this standard season that whenever it falls off the radar, it's a great deck because people like it's a very specific deck to sideboard against. And if it kind of falls off the radar and people start cheating on hate, it's really easy to get an edge with it. It's also a kind of there are all lines with the deck, so you've got to make good decisions, which benefits high level players.
Yeah,
a lot, I think.
Rally's a really complicated deck to play, and there's a lot of room for getting large advantages in your game depending on how well you play it. So
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And he beat Ben Rubin in the final, who was playing a watered down version of what you'd expect a standard Abzan deck to be. Because he was playing 64 cards, which was not an error. Not an error of deck registration, which is surprising, to be honest.
Yeah, I felt like his Abzan list was a little watered down, but it's pretty
Please,
good.
I already made that joke.
What? Did I miss it?
Yes.
Oh no. I'm sorry. He stole my.
Fine.
For the record, he stole my joke. I'm upset.
Anyway, but there were a bunch of rally decks in the top 8, I believe 3 or 4, which kind of shows you what a good choice it was for the tournament. But kind of a bit of a more interesting deck kind of rogue deck outside the top 8 was none other than the Dragon Master himself, Brian Kibler, on 4-color dragons. Because of course he was on 4-color dragons. I mean, it's Brian Kibler.
He even plays dragons in Hearthstone. It's literally just his thing.
Yeah, I mean, you build a brand, right?
Yeah.
Like, and fair play. He came 20th. Like,
Perfectly
deck
reasonable.
seems sweet.
Yeah.
Like, you're playing Ojutai and Dramoka, and Ataka. All 3 Dragon Lords. Those are all very powerful spells. And 4 Thunderbreak Regents as well.
Yeah, they're all decent cards, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, put behind the hands of a good player. Certainly reasonable used as well.
Yeah. It's like you put a control deck in a master control deck, control players. You put big, mid-range green and red creatures in Brian Kibler's hands, and he's generally going to do quite well.
Yeah, that is a fair point.
Yeah. So that was GP Oakland. Obviously, the kind of the last standard Grand Prix of a season is always a bit odd. There's some rogue decks popping up because people want to play some more fun, and they're kind of starting to think about what decks they want to be playing from Oath. The spoiler had already been out at that point, so the super teams will already be starting to plan for the Pro Tour. I would expect.
Yeah. So based on the current standards, so without Oath, what do you think is the best card in standard right now? If you were to build a deck that for a standard tournament, what card would you want to try and fit 4 of in that deck?
That's a really good question.
I know my answer.
I know your answer. It's wrong, but that's not the point.
No. My answer is probably actually correct. 'Cause it's not a joke answer.
Oh, that's
surprisingly
me.
Right?
I want to say Gideon, but I don't think I'm right.
I think in the current standard, the way it's built, Offense is probably the best card in standard. It's the most aggressive card that also just straight up locks out one of the best decks.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even straight lock it out, that's the thing. You can still Nantuko Husk them out.
It makes it way harder to win.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it makes it way harder to win.
Going 2-drop Anaffenza into Rhinos, an almost unbeatable draw.
Yeah.
And I think the second best card in standard is probably Jace.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, actually. And thinking about it, he's probably actually the choice for the card you want to try and ram it into a deck. Because, I mean, he's warped the format around him, completely. Since Theros rotated out, and you don't have an easy way to kill him with value, it's been really hard to justify not playing a deck with Jace, because he is just so much value. Merfolk Looter is still good, and being able to also get kind of a Snapcaster Mage on the end of it as well is just a bit ridiculous. Especially now we've lost the filtering that the Temples gave us.
Yeah, that's
He's
fair.
a good way to filter through your deck as well.
I think turn 2 Jace is probably the best thing you can do on turn 2 in the format, and turn 3 and offense is probably literally the best thing you can do on turn 3. So
Unfortunately, it's really hard to do the two. It's also why I think actually why if everyone's playing Jace, it's really hard to play Anafenza. So Rally, it's Rally has an easier time of it.
yeah, I agree.
So anyway, controversy, the thing that Magic players love the most. The scene is the top 8 of the SCG Open at the weekend. The format is modern. You have one player playing Griselbrand, that is the deck that uses Goryo's Vengeance to reanimate a Griselbrand and then a Borborygmos the Enraged. Note the Enraged, it's going to be important later. And then draws a lot of cards, keeps drawing cards by gaining life with a card called Nourishing Shoal, which lets you gain life by exiling a green card in your hand. The deck's pretty fragile, but also very powerful. His opponent resolves the card Pithing Needle. Now, what Pithing Needle lets you do is it lets you name a card, and then activated abilities of that card can no longer be activated. The Griselbrand player's opponent names the card Borborygmos. Now, there is actually a card called Borborygmos. It's from the original Ravnica. It is modern legal, and therefore the card he named is modern legal. However, it's pretty clear, given that this is the top 8, and both players have access to the other player's deck list. So he knows the only Borborygmos in the Griselbrand player's deck is Borborygmos the Enraged. The Griselbrand player then proceeds to reanimate Borborygmos the Enraged and start throwing lands at his opponent, because that's what Borborygmos does. You can discard a land card from your hand and deal 3 damage to a target creature or player. This has caused a little bit of controversy, because the issue here is, I think, intent versus execution. It's very clear what the intent of the player resolving Pithing Needle is.
Yeah.
The issue is the way he executed it. Technically, he named a modern legal card, and his opponent is perfectly entitled to take advantage of his mistake. The question is whether you should do it, whether you shouldn't. And I mean, it comes back to, I think we've had a couple of these in the last year or so where it comes a lot down to how far the opponent is willing to go with it, like how far they're willing to take advantage of it. Yeah, I'm not actually sure what the right answer is, by the way.
I think a lot of it is just an issue over semantics. So the controversy, quote unquote, is about the fact that, first of all, they both had deck lists. So for him to name a card outside of his opponent's deck doesn't make any sense with Pithing Needle. So there's obvious intent for what he meant to name. If he didn't have a deck list, sure, maybe he just named the wrong card. That technically is legal and modern. He could have named the wrong Borborygmos, but having the deck list in front of him, it's pretty obvious which one he meant.
Yeah. And phrasing is very important.
Yeah.
If he'd said your Borborygmos or the Borborygmos that killed me last game or any of those things,
yeah,
that would have been enough, but he just said Borborygmos, and this is where it comes in.
The other question would be, so first of all, it's semantics. Like, it's known information.
Yeah.
Second is intent, which we went over. Obvious what he intended. Third is he still named the wrong thing. So it's up to the opponent at that point to decide if they want to capitalize on that. And I don't think that Bob Wong is wrong in choosing to capitalize on that in that situation in order to gain an advantage in the match and or win it. But
no,
I also don't think it's good for the game for that type of little mini game of remembering little obscure card names is good for Magic. So I think that's where the issue comes up. I know, like, PV, for instance, has been pretty vocal about this on his Twitter account, saying that he'd never do it. He thinks it's unsporting to try, and he's surprised that the judge would even rule that way, considering the information given. And I agree. I think most pros, well, maybe, it's hard to say most pros, to be honest, because there are some pretty competitive pros. But I think a lot of people that I would look up to in the Magic community would not so much let that slide, but know what the intent was and go with it rather than trying to capitalize on the semantics of the situation. So the real question here is it unsporting as a competitor of high-level play to take advantage of that play? And is there literally any other way the judge can rule that situation than the way it was ruled, since it's so ambiguous?
I don't. I think because of the very, very specific wording he used, I don't think there's any other way the judge can rule. I agree with it. I don't think there should be room for. There can't be room for mistakes like that in the rules. You can't really have leniency for that sort of thing. Otherwise, you have to draw the line somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And if you name a modern legal card, like straight up name it, you've got to assume that that's what you meant to say. Even if it's clear you didn't, you named a modern legal card, you made a play. It's like in the top 8, like making a you make an attack, you pass priority, and then you say, oh no, hang on, wait, I don't want to do that. You would not lambast his opponent for saying, no, you passed priority to me, it's now my turn, I'm gonna block, and you've made a misplay.
So
like you wouldn't lambast someone for that, right?
I wouldn't. I could see emotionally a judge saying it was obvious what he meant and just doing it, but the policy on it is incredibly clear, and the deck list shouldn't matter, because that's a deck list given to you in a tournament like that is considered outside notes, so it's not actually information on what's going on currently in that game. So from a judge perspective, since he just said Borborygmos, that has to be Borborygmos, since that is a legal card. And if he said Borborygmos, like you said, that's in your deck, or that killed me, or anything like that, that's a different thing. But I actually know the judge who was the table judge at the tournament that this happened at, and unfortunately, that's just not what he said. What I'm upset about, slightly, is that we have to have this little game of gotcha. And we've been trying to slowly remove that game of gotcha from the tournament scene over the last couple of years. And they've done a pretty good job of it with a lot of the rules changes and not having to deal with your opponent's triggers and that type of thing, because there's not as much gotcha going on. But this feels like a really bad gotcha, which I think is the problem.
Yeah, and it's a feel bad. That's part of the issue. Is it is a feel bad, and they'll probably look at this and look at how they might be able to clean it up. But occasionally, you just got to say the guy made a mistake, and if you're in the top, like, we talk about, there's an amount where you want to say, well, the guy's grinding out an edge, but equally, you're in the top 8 of a tournament. Winning it is worth quite a lot of money to you.
Yes.
And if you're a professional Magic player, you're gonna take the edge. Like, I honestly can't, hand on heart, say if I'm in that situation, I'm not gonna follow the rule book and say my opponent named Borborygmos, not Borborygmos the Enraged. I'm gonna reanimate Borborygmos the Enraged and start throwing lands at him.
I feel like I would. I don't think it's an integrity thing, but I think it is about sportsmanship. From my feeling, I wouldn't be upset totally if someone did that to me. I would be like, okay, I made the mistake, that's fine. But the way I play, I feel like I would be obligated to not take advantage of something that I know obviously what they meant.
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm also of the opinion that if you're in the top 8 of an SCG Open, you should know better.
That's true,
like,
but
if we're at Friday Night Magic, I'm not going to call you. I'm going to let you take your blocks back or your attack back. Like, I'm not going to care.
This is a little bit different than like take your attack back or block back, because this is more like, that analogy doesn't make sense, because that's like, I'm going to attack you for 4 and you have lethal on board to kill me. Can I take that back? This is more like, I'm naming your card, you can't kill me with it. It's a little bit different of a thing. The intent is I'm naming your card, not, oops, I made a bad attack.
Yeah. I mean,
So either way, I think the judge is correct. I feel like the call is correct. I just don't think the gotcha is correct. And that's something I think we should be removing from the game. And it creates an
Yeah,
interesting conversation, and maybe Wizards will take a look at it as a situation, or maybe they'll just leave it. It doesn't happen that often, to be honest.
yeah,
But
like they've like you said, they have done a good job of kind of getting this sort of thing
yeah,
out of there. But it is still a thing that happens, and that is something that maybe needs addressing at some point.
yep. So
But
just an
yeah,
interesting
it's
thing that popped up this weekend.
yeah,
Maybe we'll see
um,
something come from it. Maybe not. Either way,
yeah,
it made an interesting story and a good conversation in the Magic
yeah.
community.
I mean, also kind of side issue aside, Grishol Brand putting up a good result. It's actually probably not the best thing for the deck when kind of calls for it to be banned had died down a lot because it hadn't really put up any results recently, and it putting up a top 8 there is it could have done with laying its head down and keeping its profile a bit lower for the lot for just like another tournament before the bannings come around before the modern Pro Tour.
Yeah, I'm
But
still really surprised that Goryo's Vengeance isn't banned, to be honest.
well, they haven't made any single ban before uh until the modern Pro Tour. They just don't. They wait until the Pro Tour. They kind of let modern sit
Because
for a
they like
year.
to make it exciting for the Pro Tour with a new format. I don't. I think it's.
Yeah,
I also think that's a wrong decision, to be honest.
yeah.
Waiting
I
to
mean,
ban something that's clearly wrong in the format so that the Pro Tour is exciting just makes the format fester and miserable for months on end until that.
yeah. You're speaking to someone who grinds PPTQs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing with that. I totally disagree with that decision.
But I mean, I actually don't think. Slight aside. I think we both
Yeah.
agree on that. But slight aside, I don't think they should ban Goryo's Vengeance. I don't think that's the cause of the problem. The problem is Nourishing Shoal. Like there was Goryo's Vengeance decks before, like
Hmm.
the old Grizzle Band deck, which was Grixis and played Emrakul and Fury of the Horde. That deck was fine. It sure it got it got you occasionally, but it was never consistent enough. It never did well enough to put up results. That was fine. The problem is the fact that Nourishing Shoal lets them go off at instant speed. In your opponent's end step, and
Yeah.
then you can then they expend all their resources to stop you, and then you untap and do it again. Like that's the issue.
Getting multiple turns to do it, yeah, is a little rough.
Yeah,
Or
yeah. I
multiple
mean,
draws out of it anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's my view anyway.
I agree.
But
But that was this
anyway,
weekend in the tournament scene. A lot to talk about. We're going to go ahead and move on to what everybody's waiting for, the showcase of a couple spoilers. We're going to go over our discussion on that. And yeah, that was Tidings of the Week. Welcome to Spoiler Warning. We're going over the Oath of the Gatewatch spoilers, or at least a couple of them, to kind of showcase some of the cards that Archie and I think will be pretty cool and or want to discuss. So
yes, good, bad, ugly, the usual stuff.
exactly the first couple cards I wanted to the first card I wanted to look at anyways is Matter Reshaper. So this is a 2 cool new waste colorless mana symbol, aka 3 mana. 3/2, where when it dies, you reveal the top card of your library, and as long as it's a permanent that costs 3 or less, you may put it into play. Otherwise, you draw that card. So this card is Value City as far as a 3 mana 3/2 goes.
It's not bad.
Not bad. Wow. That is supremely underselling it, I think.
I mean, yeah. Look, the card is good. It's good to get off a collected company. In standard, in limited, it's just you'll trade for something and either draw you a card, put a land into play, or put a creature into play. Like that's what it will do. It's just good. Like there's I can. It's fine when you're behind, because it's gonna block and draw you a card. When you're if you're just curving out, it's good. I mean, in limited, it might be a little hard to cast on 3 with the colorless mana symbol. I have just no conception about how easy waste mana is going to be able to get by turn by what turn. Like I have no concept of it yet. Um, I think it might turn 3 might be reasonable to think to cast it on curve, but I'm not sure.
So
Um,
where I see this card seeing play is in the black red Devoid deck.
yeah, I mean, certainly in limited, and if that deck becomes a thing in standard, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's good wrath protection. Your board get wraths, and you either get a creature into play immediately, or you get to draw a card, or you filter a land out. Like any of those things are good for you.
Honestly, this might be reasonable in like a rally shell as well. It has
I
a
mean,
ton of value, and you want it to die.
yeah, I mean, a rally shell's fine. You're rallying. I mean, you're rallying for 2 or
The,
3 a lot of the time. So yeah.
the hard part is the mana, obviously, because you do need that colorless mana. But there are some
Yeah,
tools in the new set to allow you to create that mana.
yeah. I mean, in rally can run pain lands as well if you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about standard. So I'm not, not too concerned about that. I mean, if we're talking about kind of black red devoid standard, obviously you've got corrupted crossroads, the basically the devoid city of brass, um,
Yes.
is your go-to one there because it gives you both colorless mana and the colored mana you need to cast your spells. But I think this card is good. I think it kind of showcases the Eldrazi design pretty well, the colorless mana design. The art's also pretty rad as well, like the two guys just splitting apart. But overall, I like the card. I think it synergizes well with a couple of decks in standard. Anything you want to put in, like obviously it's 3 CMC, which is important for Collected Company.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good limited card. I wouldn't mind first picking this. Obviously, I think there'll be a lot of colorless cards. You'll first pick, I think, in this format, because it'll keep you open.
We have a slightly less interesting card next, although I've heard it touted as a completely broken card. I do not remotely believe that.
It's fine in Commander.
Next, we have Call the Gatewatch. 3 mana sorcery. Search your library for a planeswalker, reveal it, put it into your hand.
Yo, Chase, get over here, man!
Yeah, I don't really see this card seeing play in standard anywhere.
I don't know. You'd rather just play an extra planeswalker.
In a deck that's playing like Super Friends, let's say, where they're playing a bunch of different planeswalkers, this card would be better served as a card that just drew cards rather than searched for a planeswalker.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you just don't have time to take off to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're playing Super Friends in Commander, that's different. I mean, three converted mana cost tutors have proven themselves to be fine in Commander. I'm thinking of Idyllic Tutor as probably it's another 2 and a white tutor, and it goes and gets an enchantment, and if your deck's built around enchantment, that card's good.
But so the only argument I really see for this card in standard is, but hey, dude, now we have 8 Gideons. You don't really want to take a turn off to play a Gideon the turn after. You want to be curving out when you play your Gideon, and this card does not curve out.
No, I'd much rather cast our next spoiler, which happens to cost exactly the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
Oath of Gideon. I'd much rather curve Oath of Gideon into Gideon.
Exactly.
This is a card I think is genuinely good. It fits in the curve of like green white tokens or banned tokens on the 3-drop slot where they didn't really have anything else. Like, I had Nissa there before, but I think they'll put new Nissa here and Oath of Gideon, which I think will be good. Allowing your first Gideon to ultimate, stick around and make your opponent deal with it, and they have to get through two core allies at that point to do it, and make your future Gideons stick around more. It also is a thing you can just sacrifice to Dramoka's command if you've got other enchantments you want to protect, like maybe Retreat to Emeria or a Silk Wrap. It does have a lot of synergies in the format, and I think it's a card that could see a lot of play. I haven't had the chance to test much with it yet, but I'm going to be interested to test with it. I think it makes it also just realistic to ultimates of your planeswalkers as well, like Nissa, and certainly like even if you're playing it like a black-white shell, it allows Obnixilis to double down tick, turning him into 5 mana kill 2 creatures over 2 turns,
Mm-hmm.
or possibly down tick, up tick, down tick, and stay alive, which is huge.
So, on the subject of 3 mana white cards,
Yeah, a bit of a theme
Wall of
developing here.
Resurgence here. which is a 3-mana 0/6 wall that when it comes into play, you awaken a land and put 3 counters on it. Um, this card... So, there's a long lineage of white walls, which are constructed playable. Like Wall Denial, for instance, Wall of Omens. And a lot of them have something in common. Either they're really hard to get by due to a really big toughness, or they give you some sort of value. And this card, one is an 0/6, so it blocks all the 4 and 5 power creatures that are people kind of have to worry about. And 2, you get a quote-unquote free 3/3 out of it, since they could technically kill your land off of this. But
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great limited card.
this card's insane and limited. I feel like it's definitely constructed playable. It's just a matter of figuring out which deck you want to put it in. There might be some like Ojutai control deck that definitely wants this effect.
I mean, I would say you're definitely playing this in a deck with Planar Outburst constructed. Like, if Planar Outburst is your wrath of choice, this is a decent sideboard option against a lot of things because it gives you a 2-for-1. It lets you leverage your lands later in the game into something. If you're playing like Esper, you can just stick 3. You could stick 3 counters on a Shambling Vent and turn it into a 5/6, right? Yeah, 5/6 lifelink.
No,
which is big game. I mean, it does expose it to removal, but
it has a ton of synergy with all the man lands, and of note, it is a wall that gives you a 3/3 haste, so you can also attack for 3 that turn.
Like, yeah, obviously not if you play it on turn 3. The issue is the slight worry of you play it on turn 3, you animate your land gets killed, and you get set back a turn. But then you have an 0/6 wall, which usually blocks pretty well. So
yeah. It has a downside slightly, since the land is somewhat vulnerable, but I feel like it's definitely very good. So this is just the card to look out for. If you see it in draft, I think I would still take like really good removal over it, but it's really close for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's actually an interesting pick will be between that and our next card, which I think is going to be. I mean, it has a very good lineage for sure.
So I wanted to pick this card out because it looks insane in limited. Obviously not a constructed card, but this is Blinding Drone. So it's 1 blue for a 1/3, which is already an okay body for a 2-drop in blue. And it has colorless mana tap to tap target creatures. So blue does not usually get a ton of tappers and tap effects. It's usually more of like a white effect.
And they're usually quite conditional in blue.
So the fact that blue gets a quote-unquote unconditional tapper like this at common is insanely good, and I suspect this card is going to be a very high pick for me. Next card we have is another limited card that looks sweet. Thought Harvester. Long lineage of 2 mana, 2/4 flyer. Or sorry, not 2 mana. 2 mana, 4 mana, 2/4 flyers.
2 mana, 2/4 flyer. Sign me the hell up.
Right. This is the Azure Drake of yonder years with slight upside. The slight upside this time being whenever you cast a colorless spell, an opponent will exile the top card of their library. So 4 mana 2/4 flyer is already very good. It blocks the Cloud Manta, which is a 3/2, blocks a lot of 2-power flyers, 1/2 flyers. There's not a lot of flyers in the set that have 4 or more power that you actually will be casting before this.
You have to get up to like Wavewing Elemental or Rare Standard, I believe, to be getting past this, or a big converged Sky Shroud Elf.
And the fact that it has 2 power makes it a lot better than the 0/4 in Battle for Zendikar, since you can actually block creatures and kill them. The other upside is obviously that it activates all your processors. Moving on to a bit more blue, we have Crush of Tentacles.
Now this is a card I think is kind of slipped by on the radar a little bit. I think this card is constructed playable, and the reasoning I have is that kind of blue-green ramp was a thing that has kind of been sitting on the edges of playability. Part of the Water Veil has been a thing that's been around as kind of a finisher, and I can see you awaken a part of the Water Veil, you make your 6/6, you take an extra turn, you play, like, you've got a lot of mana, you have 9 mana at that point. You play any random ramp spell from your hand, and then surge this. You return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So you clear the way, and you swing with your 6/6 and leave an 8/8 token behind. It's that's a pretty dominating board position to be in, especially for if you. I mean, obviously that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you cast this on 6 mana, you return their siege rhino to their hand, and you're unhappy. That is an entirely fair assessment. It's also a bomb in limited, but it's a mythic, and it has a very powerful effect, so that's not surprising. But I think this card could be good, and I'm gonna be on the lookout for whether blue green ramp is good enough, or whether red green ramp is just so much better that it's not viable. But it's kind of gonna be interesting to try and brew with, and I'll be interested to see how it does. I would be surprised if someone doesn't make a deck with it at some point.
Yeah, definitely a card to look out for. You'd have to be squidding me to say that this card's not going to see play somewhere. We have Inverter of Truth, which is quite a bit different than Saison Perverter of Truth.
Yes!
Also in a long lineage of 4 mana, 6/6 black flying creatures with horrible downsides.
That are unplayable unless you're Colony Woods.
Yeah, this is the new Abyssal Persecutor, aka the best card ever made. So, 4 mana.
Don't play this card.
6/6 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, exile your library, then shuffle your graveyard into your library. So, what do you think would actually need to be playable in standard, or would need to be in standard for you to consider playing a card like Inverter of Truth?
Well, I'd want to have at least 20 cards in my graveyard before I cast this card.
So you'd have to have like a bunch of Satyr Wayfinders and stuff, just stuff that incrementally give you that advantage.
Yeah, but the issue is, it's a 4 mana 6/6 flyer. You want to slam this on turn 4. Mm-hmm. You want to like. I'd almost want Dredge to be legal, but then if Dredge is legal, you're doing a completely different thing.
Yes. I
just don't like. I could see some sort of weird combo deck with what's the Sphinx? The Sphinx that the Misthollow Griffin. Sorry.
Sure.
Misthollow Griffin, where you want to exile all those and do something funky with that, and Lab Maniac getting all your cards in your graveyard. I just can't. In this standard, I cannot see a reason why you want to play this, and certainly don't play this card in limited. I mean, well, you can, but
let's say you're playing the mythological deck that's playing 4 of these. Your hand has 2 Inverter of Truths. It's turn 4. You have some amount of cards in your graveyard. You play Inverter of Truth. What does your second Inverter of Truth do? Nothing. So, yeah, I don't see this card being very good at all. I would probably stay away from it as well.
Yeah.
But next, Kozilek's Return. This card, I'll let you read it.
This card says, 2 in a red, instant. Just let me say that again. Instant. Devoid. Has no color. That's actually really relevant. Kozilek's Return deals 2 damage to each creature, so it's instantly Devoid Pyroclasm. God, that let's actually just stop there. That card alone will be playable in Modern because it deals with Extra Champion for Trump and for decks like that. Like flat out, that card will be playable. The fact that it's got this second long line of text. Whenever you cast an Eldrazi creature spell with converted mana cost 7 or greater, you may exile Kozilek's Return from your graveyard. If you do, Kozilek's Return deals 5 damage to each creature. That's insane. Utterly bonkers. So you cast this on turn 3 and you sweep away your opponent's early mana ramp. This is standard. Let's just talk about standard before we talk about Modern. Mm-hmm. This you cast it on to sweep it. I mean, it gives Red Green Eldrazi a game against Ataka Red. You play 4 of these in your deck, and you hope to draw one, and that's how you beat Ataka Red. It's not pretty, but that's kind of what you would do. You play some amount of Hangout Walkers as well to get in the way and make some tokens and do Enjadi Offshoots because they survive. But essentially, this and Enjadi Offshoot are how you beat Ataka Red.
Yeah,
and then
card looks insanely good.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then. But then, you just have this in your graveyard, you've cast it randomly, and then against Abzan, they've got a board they've had their amazing start. They've cast 2 Siege Rhinos. You cast Ulamog. You don't even have to exile the Siege Rhinos. You exile 2 of their lands and kill the two Siege Rhinos with Kozilek's Return, the flashback, as it were. The card is bonkers, utterly bonkers. I might be a little excited. I mean, Toronto Modern now has got, with this set, with new Kozilek and Kozilek's Return has got some very serious pieces. Like, I'm genuinely scared. Like, I mean, I'm a Bowls player, so I'm not too scared because Tron's still a good matchup, I think. But it's still, yeah.
So my only concern with the card is there's a very good reason that the decks in Modern aren't playing like Fire Spout and a large smattering of 3-mana sweepers is because 3 mana is 1 mana too many. So this is that 1 mana too many. That's the exact reason why decks like Tron are playing actual Pyroclasm, because it's 2 mana. So
yeah.
the question here is the extra mana worth the extra turn?
I mean,
the card's very good. I think it'll see play still for sure. It's definitely going to be good in Standard. That's not a question.
Yeah.
If there are decks that want this type of effect and there are aggro decks, this card is going to just destroy them. But in Modern, the real question is the extra mana worth the potential free flashback in a deck that plays Eldrazi and the colorless? And I think there is still going to be a good amount of decks that will want to be playing Pyroclasm over Kozilek's Return. So,
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. This is Tron. This is for Tron in Modern. Like, it's not for any other deck. No other deck would want to play this. This is Tron because you can find it off Ancient Stirrings.
That's very true. You can draw it off of Ancient
Stirrings. Like, it's unreal. Like, how good this card is, and like, sure, you might still lose the affinity, but like, one of your biggest problems is Etch Champion, for a lot of decks, and this card does deal with it. So if you think Affinity is gonna be a big problem for you, like if Affinity is a good matchup for you, then you don't care. But if you think Affinity is gonna be a problem for you, this card does go a long way to deal with it, because Affinity can kill you on turn 3, but it's hard. Like, it's hard for it to do it. And if you cast this, they have to have done some really serious work to have got around it.
Next and finally, we have Reflector Mage, which is the revitalization of Mana Wars Everywhere. Oh man. So 3 mana 2/3, bounce a creature, and that owner of that creature cannot cast spells with the same name as that until your next turn.
This card is very good.
This card is really sweet.
Usually, Mana Wars are good when you're playing an aggressive deck and you want to tempo your opponent out. And even if you're not playing an aggressive deck, they're just very good tempo cards. The fact that this guy also gives you an extra turn without the problem card, it gives you another draw to find a permanent answer to it. It means that if your opponent doesn't have anything else to do, you can just strand that card in their hand for, if it's late in the game, you top deck this, you return your opponent's big creature, 6 green 6/6 to their hand, and they just top deck another land. They're stuck not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
The card is legitimately very, very, very good, and I think it's the best. It's probably the best of the cycle of multicolored uncommons, but just in general, there's a very, very good cycle of multicolored uncommons in this set.
Do you think there'll be a new shell that includes this card in Standard?
Maybe. I mean, the card's good. I'm not sure where it would fit. It's not an ally, so you can't really put an allies deck around it. But I just don't really see where it fits, because probably, I mean, I just might not be good enough. But
yeah, I mean, it's too good of a card to not be played somewhere.
Yeah, but like it feels like it should be play somewhere. I just can't see it, and that's why pros are pros some of the time.
The other thing to note on this is it only bounces an opponent's creature. So
yes, you can't reset one of your own creatures.
You can't reset your Wall of Resurgence and get another 3/3 or 3 more counters on a land, or anything like that. So just a note, don't make that misplay at your pre-release. But other than that, these are just a couple things to look out for the set. The whole set looks pretty interesting. We'll be playing the pre-release here soon as well, so hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit more insight that way. But everybody, hope you have fun at your Oath events. And yeah, seems like a good experience for all.
Yeah, I mean, the set looks interesting. It's certainly not. I don't think it's the best set I've seen
recently, but I'll be interested to see the impact it has on standard and how it shakes up the draft format. So yeah, we'll see it. Certainly, it's going to be an interesting kind of depth and dive into the unknown of the two-block paradigm.
Thanks for watching today. This has been the Chump block. We're just gonna throw up a quick cracker pack on the screen. Have a bit of a discussion in the chat as to what you might pick. It's a pack from Oath, so we can speculate over what the good picks are in the new format. I think it's going to be interesting. It certainly looks like it from this pack, and I hope you have a good week. And we'll see you after the pre-release.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye.